Zuri. Clicking the blinker on, I turned right, heading further into the epicenter of East Okima, down the manicured street with precisely cropped hedges. This side of the city district, East Okima, was occupied mainly by werewolves. The stark contrast between the districts was mind-blowing. The east side was new, modern buildings, skyscrapers, everything fancy and pristine. The werewolves kept to themselves, organizing their side of the district into neat subdivisions with perfectly paved roads and not a bush out of place. Humans, like myself, and other beings, could venture into the East District and the subdivisions, as long as we didn't cause trouble. I made another turn, and to your left another asshole wolf pack. I paused at my own musings, assholes who bare their teeth like mutts at a pound when you drive by. Please don't be alarmed, this is a 3,000-pound vehicle, the dog will ooze. I snorted, feeling slightly better even though it was crude. Overall, Okima was overwhelmingly large. The city's divisions never ceased to amaze me. It was divided amongst the supernatural races, with humans sprinkled throughout the divisions. Each division was completely different styles of buildings, building materials and colors. Each district even had different plant life. The east side preferred cropped evergreen hedges and the west side preferred climbing plants like ivy and clematizers. I sighed, my skin crawling with nerves. I was ready to be back on the west side of Okima already, the side I preferred, with beautiful historic brick buildings and old wooden stores, where I could easily lose myself inside a musty bookstore or aromatic candle shop, and ultimately where I felt safest. The district of West Okima, Dragon District, where actual dragons resided, had old, historic buildings of stone, small square wood paint glass windows, and hand-milled wood beams. I love the historic area of the west side. Especially when the dragons played nice and weren't complaining about a centuries-long feud with the werewolves that no one remembered the cause of. Their memories were long, but damn, holding a grudge for that long baffled me. It's not like their disputes weren't ever settled either. Hell, the werewolf one may have been settled ages ago. It's just that dragons never forgot. West Okima was the safest for beings like me, human, because no one desired to piss off a dragon and crime was nearly non-existent. The east side, where I was granny careful driving at the moment, occupied mainly by wolves, witches, and ogres, was the most troublesome. They fought amongst themselves. And fights, from what I had seen on the news, could break out anywhere and at any time. I had no desire to be in or around it. Not because I was a peace-loving gal, but because everyone was allowed to carry weapons and use magic. Getting struck by an ogre's axe, witch's spell, or chomped by werewolf teeth wasn't top of my list for fun. I flicked my blinker on to take a right turn and I scanned the houses on my left. Not there yet. But I did catch a political sign. I scoffed. The city of Okima as a whole was ruled by a human woman gifted with dragon magic. I blew my lips. Gifted, more like political brokering. Queen Arella stayed locked up in her castle home, called Gadia Castle, on the outskirts of Okima, where spells, and every high-tech security gadget ensured her safety. She made an appearance once a year, demonstrating her power on the first Saturday in July to celebrate the god Eloi's rise to power and Diomedes' fall back to the underworld. Her display usually consisted of fancy magic works and her various paranormal minions surrounding her. Then she would go back inside for another year, passing laws and making deals from the comfort and safety of her home. Checking the rearview mirror, West Okima continued to fade from sight. I lived on the west side in the dragon community, where I was left alone, in my little gated apartment complex with my cat, Luyuel. Despite my crabby, cat-hoarding, old biddy of a neighbor, I loved how protected I felt inside the complex. Glancing over to the passenger seat, a little black box stared at me. I hated the box, and I hated what I would have to put inside. Grimacing, I pulled over to the side of the road. This gated community, much like every other PAX, faced me with black iron bars and a matching fence that looked like vicious teeth. The gate shone shut, clanging in place like a death toll bell after a car ahead of me drove through. Taking a deep breath, I tried to dispel the dread I felt, but only managed to feel the hairs begin to stand on my arms. I took another look, making sure to overlook the ferociously grinning teeth of the gate. In a postage stamp-sized box building, Anno watched the entrance and exit of the gated werewolf community. I groaned. Arno and I weren't exactly buddies. He tolerated me because I knew some mutual werewolves from work and back when I was in high school, and I tolerated him as I liked not being chomped to pieces. Merging back onto the road, I rolled down my window manually, wishing again for those fancy electric windows on the newer vehicles. I carefully zoomed across the street, pulling up to the gatehouse window and pasting a bright, fake smile for the prickly wolf. Anno's scowl deepened across his olive-toned face while he rolled his emerald eyes at me. "You're not welcome back," he growled, raking his fingers through a mop of ebony hair. I shrugged, pretending nonchalance. "I have something that needs to get back to the Sandalio holding." Arno perked a brow. "And that is?" "None of your business," I said, my throat constricting. "Ah," Anno replied, a smug smirk creasing his hardened face. I wanted to wipe it clean. If Arno knew what happened, I wondered how many others in the Sandalio pack did too. Arno grinned viciously, exposing his fangs just to taunt me. "I will allow you in trance one last time, Zuri, then don't come back. Your ties here are done." I dipped my head in thanks as Anno didn't have to allow me in. And I knew his silent threat was serious. "I understand." Anno hit the button allowing the double iron gates to open inward. The thick metal silently opened into a nicely landscaped subdivision. Each house was manicured to perfection, each varying slightly in color. Beautiful maples lined in between the paved road and sidewalk. Lifting my foot off the brake, I drove inside. I knew where I was going by heart, and like my heart, it hurt painfully that all I had envisioned for myself was a lie. I swallowed back all the tears threatening to fall. Already I had spent too much time wallowing. Arriving at the house where I needed to be, I made a U-turn in the middle of the silent road and parked. The rumble of the engine tried to drown out all the scattered messy thoughts in my head. I glanced down at the engagement ring on my finger. I had yet to take it off, hoping maybe I was wrong. Yet me being here proved otherwise. The ring made my heart wrench and my stomach swirled with bitterness that I was duped, and wearing it, even now, reminded me not to be so careless again, or at least not so easily duped. Even now, the pain of what I must do, broke me. His last words, "I would marry you today if I could, you know that, Zuri." It was all bullshit and it hurt deeply. Being cheated on and abandoned was something I'd not dealt with in my life, and I wasn't sure how to place the twisting emotions. Right now, I'm angry, hurt, and a little bitter. Earlier today, I felt ugly. The breakup between us was more a reflection of him than me, but it still hurt and caused me to question myself. 2 years of memories, pictures, fun, all thrown away in a matter of minutes, yet it felt like hours. Sighing, I rested the back of my head against the headrest of the Bronco, evaluating where I was physically and emotionally for a brief moment. I was inside the gated community of the Sandalio pack, waiting to gather up some courage to step out of my rig and face the jerk who'd broken my heart. Emotionally, I was a mess. Staring at the ring, I pulled it off my finger, something I should have done 2 weeks ago, snorting derisively as I shoved it back in the small black box to die. Lazaro was mate bonding next week to a werewolf in another pack. They made an adorable couple. Even I had to admit it. Still, the sting of the breakup after being engaged for a year, along with the fake promise of forever love, burned my heart more than I would ever dare to admit out loud. I checked my long blonde hair in the rearview mirror. My long, curling iron ringlets were a mess, but I didn't care. My black blouse had a small hole in the left side bottom hem, but it would be covered by my dark brown leather jacket. My dark wash jeans and hiking boots fit comfortably. I slid the handgun I carried for protection from my side holster and stuck it in the glove box out of respect to the Sandalio pack. A werewolf couple passed my rig, walking hand in hand, their narrowed green eyes fixed on me, before turning away. A human wouldn't be a threat to them. Shifters and magic abounded in the whole of Quiverland, let alone Okima. Dragons stayed on their side of town while werepacks stayed on theirs, and other forms of paranormal lined the outskirts and anywhere else. Humans, like myself, were outnumbered, scattered throughout Quiverland, but we were left alone for the most part since most races found us nothing more than a mild annoyance at worst and less than important at best. I glanced out the window to Lazaro's parents' gated picturesque mansion. Lazaro's car pulled out of the pristine concrete driveway, taking off south toward the downtown area of the west side. I sighed, opening the Bronco door. His father spotted me before I made it across the street. His grey-brown brows furrowed, and green eyes held annoyance. Like Lazaro, his father was well over 6 feet, broad and muscular. "Zuri," he announced. I swallowed. "Hello, Mr. Sandalio," tucking my long sunshine blonde hair behind my ear, I continued, "I need to give something back to Lazaro." Arthur rolled his eyes, striding to meet me. "What is it?" he demanded. "You'll know when you see it," I replied despondently. "I can't keep this." Arthur opened the black box, scowling further, his bushy eyebrows scrunching tightly together, becoming one. "How did you get this? Is this some kind of joke, human?" Arthur practically growled the last word, sending shivers up my back. I refused to let him see. "No, sir. Ask him yourself." I straightened my back, forcing my hands not to crawl into my jean pockets. "I know you never liked me, but you also know damn well I don't lie." "You're right," he conceded and spat out in disgust. "I can smell eyes on the broken bar humans. Whatever he did, he shouldn't have. I will take care of this." I nodded, turning to leave. I strode across the street back to my Bronco. The car door creaked open. "Zuri," Arthur called. I turned around, the wind whipping hair in my face. "Yes, sir?" I tucked my blonde tresses inside the back of my jacket. His tone softened a fraction and I saw a hint of compassion in his eyes. "You're a good one, just not for my son or pack." 2 other males came outside from the Sandalio mansion, glaring at me. I swallowed hard, forcing back tears. "Thank you," I choked out before my voice cracked. Sitting in the seat of my rig, all breath left my body in a rush. I closed my eyes and leaned my head against the headrest. My hands naturally gripped the steering wheel. Tears tracked down my face and I wiped them away bitterly. "At least it's over," I whispered. The keys fumbled in my hands before I was able to insert them into the ignition. My old Bronco turned over, the engine humming with power. Today was hard. Tomorrow would be harder as I said goodbye to this beast of a vehicle. Lazaro got me the Bronco, stating I needed metal to protect me, keep me safe. He found me my favorite rig and had it converted to a diesel. It had been sweet and I loved the beast of a vehicle, but it was a reminder of him and what I was to never have. "So much bullshit in one handsome body," I mumbled. The motor hummed. I checked my mirrors before pulling away for good. There would never be a need to come to this part of town again. I pulled up to the guardhouse, handing over the guest pass. "Don't come back," Eno said, shredding the temporary pass code. "No need," I replied. I returned what I needed to. "Good. Stay on your side," he sneered. I took my foot off the brake and peeled out. One thing I loved about this rig is its ability to roll coal. Black smoke plumed out the exhaust, filling his little cubicle. I grinned, hoping he choked on it for a few minutes as I took off down the road. Even with my heart feeling heavy, returning the ring to Lazaro's pack was the right thing to do. I could not morally keep his family's heirloom. I rolled down my window, taking in the September breeze. I loved this time of year when the hot stench of summer faded out into the crispness of trees changing. How the colors slowly started to turn, then all of a sudden, as if overnight, trees burst alive with the last remnant of color. Fall was my favorite time of year and soon, all the coffee shops would be humming with ads of pumpkin spice lattes and peppermint mochas. My broken bar that sounds amazing right now. Glancing at the time on the stereo, it was late afternoon. If I had coffee now, I would be awake half the night. I grumbled. Fuck it. Pulling into the local coffee shop, I ordered my usual spiced chai tea latte and added the drink to my tab. Taking off down the road, I took a right onto Maple Avenue, heading to my little gated apartment complex. It's not the ritziest, but still one of the better ones I could afford thanks to my well-paying job. I sipped on my latte, savoring the spiciness of the chai while I pushed the button on my remote to open the apartment gates. The metal ground on its hinges, sending a shiver down my spine. The motor in my Bronco rumbled through the complex, announcing my arrival to everyone. I pulled into my spot, turning the engine off. Hopping out, I locked and slammed the door to piss off the one person I knew would be watching the parking lot. The old biddy loved to gripe. She always had her window open and stared outside all day. Right on cue, I thought, catching her sudden appearance on her porch balcony out of the corner of my eye. When are you getting rid of that beast of a car, Zuri? My neighbor, Miss Thompson, screeched from her balcony. Her brown hair, streaked with silver, was wound up in bright pink curlers. As always, her oversized, Miu Miu style, lime green, paisley dress hung to her shins. Wiry hairs poked out of her upper lip, making her scowl more comical than it already was. She had no teeth and would constantly run her tongue under her lips. It bothers my cats. It bothers the neighbors. It's bad for the environment with all the pollution. Your car is ridiculous. She blathered over the yowling of cats in the background. Beginning the ascent to my apartment, I called over my shoulder, "As soon as you get rid of your 14 cats, Miss Thompson." Which is against the apartment contract, but you don't see me bitching. Cats pooled like oil at her feet. So many cats. One was good and troublesome enough. 14 was disgusting with all the litter and food. My lip twitched and curled upward, inhaling a waft of the pungent odor coming from her apartment. Miss Thompson fish-jawed a few times, her face scrunched up, comically resembling 3 of her animals sitting at her feet. "Cats don't make troublesome noises," she retorted. "Cats fight, males spray, females scream to mate, one of them is meowing all day long, and those are just the noise problems. The environmental problems, just to name a couple, unvaccinated, uncontrolled population due to cats not getting fixed," I said, ticking off each issue on my fingers as I opened the door to my apartment. I slammed the door, bolting the deadlock and the chain lock above it. Miss Thompson got under my skin quicker than normal today. The nasty old hag sits outside on her balcony scrutinizing every little move anyone does, and usually her acerbic remarks roll off my back. But today a broken bar today had already been rough, and her acid was just another pain in my ass I didn't need. I navigated the darkened apartment to the fridge, pulling out one of the seltzer beers I loved. I cracked it open, drinking the entirety before turning back to my latte. Meowing came from down the hallway. I smiled, bending down to pet my own cat. My only cat. Muyuil purred, arching her back as my fingers snaked down to her sweet spot. Her soft multicolored fur brought a smile to my face. Muyuil was the prettiest long-haired calico I'd ever seen. I sat down on the cool kitchen floor, leaning my head against the white cabinets. My right hand mindlessly stroked Muyuil. Inhaling deeply, the scent of my wax warmer I left on to cover the stench of the neighbor greeted my nose with a spicy grapefruit aroma. I sat for just a moment, enjoying Muyuil and the comforting grapefruit scent before I moved, groaning as I forced myself off the floor. Muyuil whirled in between my legs. I smiled wanly at the cat. My heart ached, and somehow Muyuil sensed it. Muyuil was a particular cat. She liked certain people, and she eventually warmed up to Lazaro. I kicked my foot and sighed. Lazaro led me to believe he was a great man, a nice man with a giving heart. Stupidly, or well naively, I thought maybe I could be a part of his life, more than just a girlfriend. I was liked by his pack before the breakup, even his mother loved me. He'd even proposed, for crying out loud. Then all of a sudden, the rug was ripped out from under me. I got dumped via email 2 weeks ago. 2 days later, after the email, He showed up at my door with roses while his liar's tongue promised me a forever. The cherry on this mountain of craptastic Sunday, his father, by an email, informs me Lazaro's getting married to Zemla from another pack and I need to cut all contact or they would end me as I was a threat to their peace treaty with the other pack. I stared at those words for an eternity, choking on my emotions. I couldn't breathe for what felt like minutes, my body refusing to inhale. For hours, tears tracked down my cheeks. After what felt like what might be the final torrent of salty waterworks, I emailed back the same day stating I had a personal item of Lazaro's I needed to return. I tossed the empty seltzer beer can in the sink. It's over, I told Luyuil. My laptop screen lit, dinging a bothersome sound warning work was emailing me. I scowled. I had clocked out from my shift of doing medical billing hours ago. My work, for today and part of tomorrow, was completed. Skeptically, I opened the message. Urgent, call me. Sorry it's late. A Gretchen M, HR. What weird-ass stuff is it now? I scowled further. Dragging my phone out of my denim jean pocket, I pressed with one hand the 6 for the human resources speed dial I had programmed while with the other, took a quick sip of my coffee. Zuri, Gretchen said in a chipper tone. Hey there, pretty lady, I said, trying to keep myself polite and not break down over the stress of the day. I took a seat at my desk chair, not knowing how long this conversation could go. How are you, my dear? I smiled. Gretchen was a kind woman, always taking the time to make certain everyone was alright and talking with them if they weren't. I'm doing great. Thanks for asking. Yourself? Head deep in papers, she giggled. I have some good news and bad news. Bad news first, I said, my stomach tightening. I never liked bad news. Bad news with medical billing could mean cease and desist letters, fraud, government involvement, more than I cared to deal with. I stilled my racing heart waiting for the ruffling on the other end to stop. Gretchen's perky demeanor was lost. She exhaled, bad news, we got bought out by a bigger billing company. You no longer work for Interconnections. I'm sending you your final check tomorrow along with all your accumulated paid time off and sick pay. I let out the breath I was holding, and inhaled a new one. I set my coffee down as my hand shook, and my mind raced with how I was going to make ends meet now. Well, this is an end of summer bummer. I made good money doing medical billing. I was the top biller, handling multiple facilities, and so much on a day-to-day basis. I would easily be able to find another job in another town, but I didn't want to pack and move again. All the jobs here were taken. And I'd be damned if I was going to be a secretary for our mediocre pay after what I made here. Tell me about it, Gretchen sighed. Interconnections was easier to maintain with the few people we had. Good news is the people who bought Interconnections desired to keep us, you because you are one of our top people and me because I'm an amazing HR badass. She paused and giggled. Now, you'll be the only biller. Your track record indicated not only are you efficient, you have next to none for mistakes. Your workload will increase, but so will the pay. You still get to work from home. How much? A grin split my face from ear to ear. I already handled a lot for certain, but a little more won't be much of a problem. Working for Interconnections gave me the freedom to be home and do things I wanted to do when my work was done. But now, to still be able to be home was truly a blessing. If the pay increased, I might be able to move out of this apartment complex and into the house I had been eyeing for the last few months. I turned the cooling latte in my hands, taking a sip. Salary is $75,000 a year. I choked. Come again. $75,000. That's ridiculous. It's $30,000 more than my current position. As I mentioned earlier, your workload will increase a lot according to what I was informed. What does it entail? Gretchen hummed, riffling through something. The fussing on her end of the phone went on for several seconds before a delighted chirp escaped her. Here at Ice a Broken Bar only, it doesn't have any other added facilities on it nor what else beyond what you already do. How peculiar. I will message the corporate office directly. Thank you. When do I report for this new job? October 1st. They want to give everyone around 2 weeks to get settled and adjusted while they fine-tune everything and do goodness knows what. You will receive your new salary during this time, as well. I'm faxing you papers you need to sign and send back, accepting this new job, payment, and workload. I want it back in the morning. I'm sorry to ask you to call me and handle this so late. No worries. Thanks for the heads up and the promotion. Have a good night, sweetie. Gretchen, in her typical fashion, hung up before I could reply. I smiled. Today's travesties were made better by the promotion. I set the phone down at my desk and polished off the latte. Bending to the right, I tossed the empty container in the desk trash can, raising my hands in a victory cheer when a cup made it in. Wheeled me out at my feet. I picked her up, cuddling her soft calico fur. Will purred in my arms, nuzzling herself against my neck. I pulled up the listing I'd been ogling for some time. Still available. I smiled. 10 acres of timberland, a small 2-bedroom cottage and gated entry. It was a steal of a price even though the listing said it needed a few undescribed repairs. I hoped it wouldn't be too terribly bad. The house sat vacant for well over a year with no interested people. The wall clock chimed 8 in the evening. I picked up my phone and called the agent. No one answered, so I left a message. Mule, how do you feel about moving? Mule mewled, stretching out and flopping on her back. Okay then, we're moving. First thing in the morning, I'm going to see about how to get that house. I gave her one last belly scratch before heading to my own bed where I looked forward to ending my incredibly confusing and emotional day.